Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. Today we're going to continue with our country study on the Philippines. In our country studies, we look at the history of migration, the current migration policy, and also the current migration situation in the country. So I'm going to continue right now with looking specifically at the migration policy in the Philippines. So starting around the early 1970s, the Philippines really became a major migrant exporting country. And within this situation, the government passed a specific labor code of the Philippines in 1974, which meant to really establish and look after this kind of overseas employment program of Filipinos. At the same time, it put into place a system of recruitment agencies, also placement fees and other things. Now, if we kind of fast forward a little bit to the early 2000s, in 2001, a medium-term Philippine development plan was put into place that was meant for the years of 2004 to 2010. And in this plan, there was an explicit goal set of sending 1 million workers overseas each year during this plan. We've also seen the way that Filipino presidents and leaders speak about migration also change over time. So between 2010 and 2016, Benigno Aquino III spoke about the goal of moving from a government that treats its people as an export commodity and as a means of foreign exchange and disregarding the social costs of Filipino families to a government that creates jobs at home so that working abroad will be a choice rather than a necessity. And when its citizens choose to become overseas foreign workers, their welfare and protection will still be a government priority. So you can already start to see a slight shift in the rhetoric and the discussion. So there's the idea that yes, people will probably still be going abroad and that's fine, but that the government wanted to make sure that this was not a specific necessity. Now, more recently, the current president, Duterte, claimed that, and I quote, "I work hard that we will earn more so that by the time, this is my promise to you and God and those working abroad, this will be the last. The next generation of Filipinos will work in the Philippines, so we will do away with so many things, corruption and drugs." Okay, so the whole point of this quote by Duterte is to basically say that he wants to try to reduce the reason that people needed to migrate in the first place and make sure that people also have jobs at home. However, it's very clear that immigration has proven a very useful tool to kind of release the pressure and avoid unrest when there has been discontent with political situations in the Philippines. And it also has been very useful in making sure to have jobs for people, albeit abroad, and helping also with poverty alleviation. So when it comes to sending migrants abroad now in the kind of framework that the Philippines has created, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration is the government agency responsible for processing workers' contracts, pre-deployment checks, as well as for licensing, regulating, and monitoring private recruitment agencies. And of course, then for the Filipinos themselves, by migrating officially, migrants receive a number of benefits like pre-migration training on social and work conditions abroad, life insurance and pension plans, medical insurance and tuition assistance for migrants and their families, and eligibility for pre-departure and emergency loans. So there are a number of ways that Filipino migrants or would-be migrants have access to services before migrating abroad. So due to the demand for workers and large numbers involved, the government actually relinquished the placement of workers to private recruitment agencies in 1976 because the workload had become so much. However, the Overseas Worker Welfare Administration provides support and assistance to migrants and their families, and both the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration and the Filipino Overseas Employment Administration fall under the Department of Labor and Employment in the Philippines. Additionally, the Commission on Filipinos Overseas provides programs and services to permanent immigrants abroad. So the idea is that There are often two different kind of subcategories of Filipinos abroad. Those that have settled permanently abroad, so you can think about kind of family migrants or marriage migrants, as opposed to those that are on temporary labor contracts, for instance, in the Gulf states. There are numerous vocational schools to help students obtain a job abroad, including domestic worker schools, nursing schools, and merchant marine academies, which are some of the most famous, most well-known, and that also train the most people. Now, the Philippines has also had a specific focus on protecting workers' rights. So numerous problems have emerged since the 1970s with regard to workers' rights abroad. So there have been issues of illegal recruitments, contract substitution, illegal placement fees, long working hours, and especially no days off in the case of domestic workers, and of course, other complaints. The 1995 Migrant Workers Overseas Filipinos Act was a landmark law that aimed to provide protection to all overseas foreign workers from pre-departure to arrival in their country of destination and then on return. So it offers in-country officers to help protect migrants in the countries of destination. Support is offered whether the overseas foreign workers have been hired formally or whether they're also unauthorized. There's free legal assistance and witness protection programs for victims of illegal recruitment. And there's also the imposing of stiff penalties for illegal recruiters. There have been a number of other acts and laws that have come into place to help to also support migrant workers and protect them over time. So in 2010, the Republic Act stipulated that there was only the deployment of workers to countries that were deemed safe. There was also compulsory insurance to cover accidental death or disability, among other protections. There was also a boosting of funding for some of these agencies and also a responsibility for reintegration programs. There was also an expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012, which enhanced the efforts to combat trafficking and increase penalties for those who violated this law by engaging in trafficking. And there was also an Anti-Mail Order Brides Act of 1990 that was brought into place. And basically this prohibits the business of organizing or facilitating marriages between Filipinas and foreign men. This was actually, though, revised in 2016 to include men and to take online transactions into account also. However, in practice, the law is easily circumvented by basing matchmaking agencies outside of the Philippines, since no laws prohibit their operation in destination countries like Japan, the United States, or South Korea. So the numbers are uncertain, but there are known to be thousands of Filipino brides sent to these countries every year. Now, another thing that the Philippines has really tried to work on in the last years is really connecting migration and development. So migrants are really encouraged to send money home, and the Filipino government has worked hard to make sending remittances via private banks cheaper and easier, and even tax-free investment programs aimed at overseas workers also. However, even though there have been a number of these programs, while the Philippines has seen good sustained GDP growth over the last 2 decades, there is still widespread poverty in the country. And additionally, there are, interestingly, key shortages in the country, often in the sectors where the Philippines is also exporting labor. So to just give an example, in 2020, there was an estimated shortage of 20,000 workers in the Philippines when 19,000 were sent abroad, or that are usually sent abroad every year. Since 2010, though, there have been major efforts to include migration in national, regional, and local development plans and to improve coordination among the different layers of government. There have also been renewed efforts to connect with the Philippine diaspora through a new online portal, which you will see here. The Philippines has also made a concerted effort to lead in migration discussions on the global stage, including hosting and participating in the Global Forum on Migration and Development, and many other areas. So the Philippines is really considered a migrant sending country that is leading in a lot of migration policy making and advocacy. So if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Please check out the other videos on the Philippines, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.